Breaking news tonight. Robert Morris, the once celebrated founding pastor of Gateway Church, the man who built one of America's largest megachurches and advised a U.S. president, has just pleaded guilty to SAing a child in the 1980s. Yes, you heard that right. After decades of denial, cover-ups, and silence, Morris has finally admitted in court that he committed crimes against a 12-year-old. The guilty plea marks one of the most stunning downfalls in American evangelical history. A megachurch empire builder now reduced to a convicted ex-offender. But the shocking part? His punishment may leave you speechless. Stay with me, because what happened in that courtroom today is not just about Robert Morris. It's about how churches handle a BUSE, how survivors are silenced, and why justice delayed is still justice delivered. Let's walk through what unfolded today. The heartbreaking story of Cindy Clemisher, the survivor who never stopped fighting, and what this means for Gateway Church and the wider Christian community. But first, let me ask you, do you believe pastors guilty of CSA should ever be allowed back into ministry? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this one is going to ignite a firestorm. Robert Morris walked into that Oklahoma courtroom today, not as a megachurch pastor, not as an author, not as a spiritual advisor, a criminal defendant. At 64 years old, the man once held up as a spiritual giant stood before Judge Cindy Pickerel and uttered one word that Cindy Clemisher, his victim, had been waiting to hear for over 40 years. Guilty. Morris admitted to 5 with a minor. The plea deal handed him a 10-year sentence. But here's the gut punch. He will serve only 6 months in county jail, followed by probation. He must also pay $250,000 in restitution and register as an ex-offender for life. When the judge read the terms, gasps echoed in the room. For many, 6 months felt like a slap on the wrist for crimes that shattered Cindy's life. After the hearing, Morris was handcuffed and taken into custody. For a man who once advised presidents and preached to tens of thousands every week, this represents an extraordinary fall from grace. To understand the magnitude of this, you need to know who Robert Morris was. He founded Gateway Church in Southlake, Texas in 2000 and built it into a megachurch empire with tens of thousands of weekly attendees. His sermons reached audiences worldwide. His books became bestsellers in evangelical circles. He even served as a faith advisor to President Donald Trump. This wasn't just any pastor. This was one of the most influential religious leaders in America. At the center of this case is Cindy Clemisher. Today, she's 55 years old. But in 1982, she was just 12 years old, wearing flowery pink pajamas on Christmas night. Morris was a traveling evangelist in his early 20s who sometimes stayed with Clemisher's family in Oklahoma. According to Clemisher, that Christmas night, Morris invited her to his room, instructed her to lie on her back, and SA'd her. She says he told her, "Never tell anyone about this. It will ruin everything." And she didn't tell, for 5 years. The SA continued into 1985 when she was a teenager. She finally disclosed it to her parents and church leaders in 1987. Morris went through what he called a restoration process. But here's the kicker. Nobody called the police. This is where the story gets even more disturbing. Years later, in the mid-2000s, after Morris had become nationally prominent, Clemisher approached him and the Gateway Church leaders. She asked for $50,000 in restitution, basically to cover what she'd spent on therapy trying to process her childhood trauma. In 2007, Morris's lawyer sent a letter that suggested Clemisher bore responsibility for the inappropriate behavior between her and Morris. Let that sink in. They tried to blame a for the SA she suffered. Morris offered $25,000, but only if Clemisher signed a non-disclosure agreement. She refused. She wouldn't be silenced again. Fast forward to 2024. After decades of roadblocks and being dismissed, Clemisher was encouraged by a family friend to go public. She shared her story with the Wartburg Watch, a blog that exposes abuse in churches. Within days of her story going public in June 2024, Gateway Church announced Morris was stepping down. In his statement, Morris acknowledged what he called a moral failure with a young lady, minimizing language that completely mischaracterizes CSA. Gateway launched an internal investigation and removed 4 elders after it was revealed that some leaders knew about the allegations for years but failed to act. The ripple effect was massive. For many believers, it felt like betrayal, not only by Morris but by the church structures that protected him. You might be wondering, how could prosecutors charge him so many decades later? Oklahoma law has a unique provision. The statute of limitations pauses when a defendant leaves the state. Morris spent much of his career in Texas, giving prosecutors the opening they needed to finally bring charges. In March of this year, a multi-county grand jury indicted him. At first, he pleaded not guilty. But after months of negotiations, Morris caved because the evidence and the survivors' courage were undeniable. Cindy's courage has already inspired others. After her story broke, numerous women across the country came forward saying they, too, had been SA'd by trusted church leaders. This case has become a landmark, a rallying cry for why statutes of limitation on CSA must be eliminated. It also forces us as believers to confront a sobering question. How many other pastors are hiding behind pulpits while their victims suffer in silence? Today in court, Clemisher was finally able to confront Morris directly. In her prepared statement, she told him his abuse rippled into every part of her life, affecting her relationships, her marriages, and how she raised her own children. But the most powerful part was this. She looked at Morris and said, "Let me be clear. There is no such thing as consent from a 12-year-old. We were never in an inappropriate relationship. I was not a young lady but a child. You committed a crime against me." Morris stared at the table in front of him as she spoke through tears. She ended by saying, "Robert, I want you to see me clearly. I am no longer the silenced you SA'd." This case has had massive ripple effects. Morris sued Gateway for millions in retirement benefits, claiming they mishandled his resignation. Gateway fired back, saying his demands do not reflect accountability for the impact of his actions. That lawsuit is still pending. This story matters for several reasons. First, it shows that no matter how powerful someone becomes, accountability can still catch up with them. Morris built an empire, advised presidents, and commanded enormous influence, but he's now a convicted ex-offender heading to jail. Second, it illustrates why victims often wait years or even decades to come forward. Clemisher tried to get justice multiple times and was dismissed, minimized, and pressured to stay silent. It took immense courage to go public. Finally, this case demonstrates the importance of eliminating or extending statutes of limitations for CSA. Without that frontier-era Oklahoma law, Morris might never have faced criminal charges at all. Today, Cindy Clemisher said this marks a new beginning for her and her family. After more than 4 decades, she finally got Morris to admit in court what he did to her. But let's be clear, 6 months in jail for years of abuse seems inadequate. The $250,000 in restitution doesn't undo the trauma. And Morris getting to sit at that table instead of making eye contact while his victim spoke shows he still can't fully face what he's done. This is a victory for Clemisher, but it's a bittersweet one. The real question is what happens next? Will other institutions finally take allegations seriously? Will they stop protecting powerful men at the expense of vulnerable children? Will they choose truth over reputation? Cindy Clemisher refused to stay silent. She fought for justice for over 40 years. And today, she won. But there are countless other survivors still waiting for their day in court, waiting to be believed, waiting for the institutions that failed them to do the right thing. If you or someone you know has experienced abuse, you are not alone, and it is never too late to seek help. That's all for today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, but please keep the discussion respectful given the serious nature of this case. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more news commentary. Thanks for watching.
I'm just happy that it is over. I feel good about it. It's behind us.
What does this do like?
I don't know that I have words for that yet.